Welcome back. Well, we're one step closer to the World Economic Forum's 2030 agenda, as the Australian government has just passed its newest digital ID bill, which strengthens the current system. Let's listen to Australian Senator Babbitt.
G'day everyone, it's Senator Ralph Babbitt here. I just want to make a quick little video to let you know that the digital ID bill has passed just now. It was supported by the Greens, the Labor Party, Senator David Van, Senator David Pocock, Senator Jackie Lambie and Senator Tammy Tyrrell. So basically everyone except for the Coalition, One Nation, and of course yours truly, the United Australia Party. It is a sad day for freedom today. Like I've always said, this digital ID has the ability to lead towards a social credit system. It has the ability to really weaponize the central bank digital currency, and it's all round a bad bill. I mean, who trusts the government to have that much information that belongs to us in a central place? It is not going to end well. Anyway, we did what we could, but yes, it has passed. Next election, vote one UAP. If we ever have the ability to, we will repeal it.
Australians are now one step closer to a restrictive digital ID, which would ultimately give ultimate control to the government. A digital ID means a social credit score, a carbon emission score, a health score, a finance score, and allows the government the ultimate control on your accessibility to physical and digital spaces. And if we don't hit the brakes on this immediately, we are all headed for a techno-communism complete with digital enslavement. Joining us now, CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media and author of the new book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, Alex Newman. Alex, thanks for being with us today. It's great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, can you break this down for us? What is your interpretation of this bill and what's happening in Australia?
Well, the digital IDs, as you just pointed out, are one component of a much broader agenda to really put all of humanity in a digital gulag, a digital panopticon, where everything you do is tracked, surveilled, monitored, data mined, processed through artificial intelligence and various algorithms. It is a system of total control that they're building now. I first started sounding the alarm about digital IDs over a decade ago, right? Because it was very obvious what was coming. You had the Rockefeller Foundation, Microsoft, Gavi, which is a front group for Bill Gates' vaccine agenda, all calling for, their little group is called ID 2020, demanding that everyone on the planet have a digital ID that would track health information, their vaccine information, and as Senator just pointed out, this will be a critical component also of the ESG scores for each person, right? Your social credit score that they're in the process of building. And Americans, don't think you're off the hook. Already numerous states are running pilot programs to bring in digital IDs. If we don't stop them, all of us will be having a digital ID very soon, and tyranny will follow.
Yeah, it is absolutely terrifying to think what ultimately ends up resulting from all of this. But I'm curious to know, why is Australia able to implement such measures? It's almost like this is like a trial run, right, for what we're all soon to face if this isn't ultimately stopped. We saw that with COVID. It all started over there. Why Australia, and what does this mean for all of us, again, if this isn't stopped?
Well, there are a handful of once Western, once Christian nations that have left their Christian roots faster than others. Australia and Sweden are both certainly among the leaders in that category. These were thoroughly Christian nations that have left their roots, that have really tried to sever their roots. What you see when you look at the Australian population, the majority now no longer identify with Christianity. The same is true in Sweden. The same is true in a lot of these so-called progressive countries. And it's much easier to manipulate and deceive people who are not Christian, who are not grounded in the Word of God, than it is, say, Americans, who have a long tradition of affection for the Bible, who have a long tradition of affection for liberty, which is, of course, a God-ordained and God-created idea and institution. And so the Australians and the Swedes are a little bit easier to manipulate than Americans. But what we will see here, if we don't stop them, you'll see this come through California, you'll see it in Illinois, New York, and other states. But they're already doing pilot programs on this in Utah and Mississippi and other conservative states as well. So they like to try out their crazy ideas in smaller post-Christian countries before they get the big fish, right, so to speak, the United States of America. But make no mistake, folks, we're next if this isn't stopped.
Wow, absolutely terrifying, Alex. ESG, as we know, stands for environmental, social, and governance scoring. But apparently it's not just affiliated with companies and businesses. I thought that's, was the connection there. Apparently now there's also individual ESG scores. I look at this, Alex, and I think we really are witnessing the slow boil here. But what can we expect on this front so long as this continues? And how is an individual ESG score any different than a social credit score? Is that just the same thing?
That is exactly the same thing, Alison. I'm so glad you mentioned that. If you want to see where this goes, if you want to see how this is going to work in the end, Communist China is the example for the New World Order crowd. Very, very much in the open at this point. So the Communist Chinese, about a decade ago is when I first wrote my first article about their social credit score. They now have every slave in China has an individual score. It's based on a wide variety of factors. Some of them you wouldn't even consider a useful metric for any reason. One of the things that I found out they take into account is, do you keep your cell phone properly charged? But what they're really interested in is, are you one of those pesky citizens who ask too many questions about what the government is doing? Do you contradict the official narrative? Do you share extremist content on social media? Do you have friends or family who share extremist content on social media? And what this is, it's a perfect tool of control, Alison. If you look at how it works in China, this is, again, what they want at the global level. If you are a good slave, you get lots of privileges. They'll even let you get a passport and go overseas. You can have a good job. You can send your children to a good school. A lot of doors open up for you. As your score gets worse, you start losing those privileges. As you lose more and more points, you start getting to the point where you can't travel anymore. You can't work decent jobs anymore. Your children can't get into a good school. And if your score drops too low, well, they'll shut off your central bank digital currencies. They might even put you in a gulag and chop your organs out. And that's no joke. They are chopping out organs from dissidents, from religious and political dissidents across China whose social credit scores get too low. So folks, be aware, this is the plan for the entire world. China is just the model, but it will be coming here and to Australia and everywhere else if we don't fight it.
That's exactly right. And just so it's ultra clear to the viewers, you, Alex, me, anyone watching would be deemed a bad citizen and would probably endure whatever the repercussions are for simply watching or participating in conversations like this. So yeah, very scary stuff that we must never allow to happen here in America. But of course, Alex, sadly, we know the technocratic hellscape doesn't just end there. Can you speak more to how the deep state, the globalists, the powers that be are also using artificial intelligence to further their nefarious agenda and ultimately brainwash children and control elections, that sort of thing?
Yeah, this is a very significant issue, Alison, and unfortunately it's not on very many people's radar. So just this week, the United Nations General Assembly approved a major resolution, incidentally sponsored by the Communist Chinese, about how AI should be used for the good of humanity, and it needs to protect human rights. And I mean, if the butchers in Beijing, who've murdered more people than any other government in the history of humanity, aren't in favor of human rights, I can't imagine who is, right? So the Biden administration fully on board with this. It passed by consensus. In other words, there were no loud objections to this agenda. And if you look at what they're doing, if you look at who is programming this, actually in 2019, they gave us another window into what they're doing when they met in Beijing, of all places, for a UN conference on AI in education. And if you read the outcome document that came out of that summit, it was called, I think, the Agreement on Artificial Intelligence in Education, the Beijing Declaration on artificial intelligence in education. They openly say that AI needs to be used to give children the right values on gender, on world citizenship, on sustainable development. So when we heard Bill Gates last year talking about how AI was going to very soon replace teachers, folks, you need to understand what's happening. They are building these tools not for the betterment of humanity, not to liberate us from backbreaking labor, but to enslave us. Now, I'm not anti-AI per se, right? AI is a tool, it's a technology, it could have useful applications, and it certainly does. But when you see wicked totalitarians programming, we saw the Google AI couldn't even make white people, right? Multiracial Nazis, African British medieval kings. When you see the Microsoft AI demanding to be worshipped, calling people slaves, we need to recognize that the megalomaniacs who are building this global digital gulag hate humanity, they hate liberty, and they need to be stopped.
Yes, indeed. And they openly tell you this too. For those that don't remember, I mean, you can just look it up, any video of anyone really from the World Economic Forum. They openly state this, they brag about it, they're excited about it. So yes, they must be stopped. Alex, I know you recently highlighted a story about an outspoken advocate who's also against the indoctrination of children, Michelle Morrow. Can you tell us more about how she was able to fight back? Tell us a little bit about her story, please.
So she's a fascinating lady. She's a homeschool mom, homeschooled her 5 children, very conservative, very MAGA, if you will, make America great again. And she was able to defeat a rhino in the primary. And now you have the education establishment, the fake media, just absolutely freaking out. They're going back into her, 8-year-old social media posts and trying to dig stuff up. It's because they're terrified that somebody might come in and just turn the light on and show everybody what's going on here. So you've got several of these who are making their way through elections. Actually, Diane Douglas, who was the superintendent of the public schools of Arizona, another wonderful lady. In Utah, you've got people like this, and it absolutely terrifies the establishment, Allison, not because they're worried about the individual. It's because they're worried that the individual will expose what they're doing and will blow the whistle on the dumpster fire, the horror show that government education has become. That's why they hate Michelle Morrow so much. And I think if it looks like she's going to win, you're going to see the screeching get to a whole new level.
Wow, that's amazing and so inspirational as well. And I think just further proof as to why we all need to be standing up and speaking out and fighting back, because this is how we ultimately win. Would you agree with that, Alex?
Absolutely, right? Everybody right now watching us, get involved somehow. It's great to consume the news, to get the information. That's step one. Once you have it, you go out and do something useful with it. Run for office. Support somebody running for office. Get active in your church. Go out and do the work that needs to be done to stand for truth, to stand for righteousness, to stand against evil, and we'll trust God with the results.
Amen. Very well said, Alex Newman. Thank you so much for all the great work that you continue to do, and thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an honor. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.